he said. "Your train will be ready in 5 minutes. If it doesn't start then, the line must be closed for another half hour." I perceived a faint smile on the old woman's face. I was sure then that I was on the track of Bauer, and probably of more than Bauer; but my first duty was to obey orders and get to Zenda. Besides, I could not force my way in, there in open daylight, without a scandal that would have set all the long ears in Strelsau a prick. I turned away reluctantly. I did not even know for certain that Bauer was within, and thus had no information of value to carry with me. "If your lordship would kindly recommend me," said the old hag. "Yes, I'll recommend you," said I. "I'll recommend you to be careful whom you take for lodgers. There are queer fish about, mother." "I take the money beforehand," she retorted with a grin; and I was as sure that she was in the plot as of my own existence. There was nothing to be done. James's face urged me towards the station. I turned away. But at this instant a loud, merry laugh sounded from inside the house. I started, and this time violently. The old woman's brow contracted in a frown, and her lips twitched for a moment. Then her face regained its composure; but I knew the laugh, and she must have guessed that I knew it. Instantly I tried to appear as though I'd noticed nothing. I nodded to her carelessly, and bidding James to follow me, set out for the station. But as we reached the platform I laid my hand on his shoulder, saying: "The Count of Hentzau is in that house, James." He looked at me without surprise. He was as hard to stir to wonder as old Sapt himself. "Indeed, sir. Shall I stay and watch?" "No, come with me," I answered. To tell the truth, I thought that to leave him alone in Strelsau to watch that house was in all likelihood to sign his death warrant, and I shrank from imposing the duty on him. Rudolf might send him if he would; I dared not. So we got into our train, and I suppose that my coachman, when he had looked long enough for me, went home. I forgot to ask him afterwards. Very likely he thought it a fine joke to see his master hunting a truant servant and a truant bag through the streets in broad daylight. Had he known the truth, he would have been as interested, though, maybe, less amused. I arrived at the town of Zenda at 3:30, and was in the castle before 4. I may pass over the most kind and gracious words with which the queen received me. Every sight of her face and every sound of her voice bound a man closer to her service. And now she made me feel that I was a poor fellow to have lost her letter and yet to be alive. But she would hear nothing of such talk, choosing rather to praise the little I had done than to blame the great thing in which I had failed. Dismissed from her presence, I flew open mouthed to Sapt. I found him in his room with Bernenstein, and had the satisfaction of learning that my news of Rupert's whereabouts was confirmed by his information. I was also made acquainted with all that had been done, even as I have already related it, from the first successful trick played on Rischenheim to the moment of his unfortunate escape. But my face grew long and apprehensive when I heard that Rudolf Rassendyll had gone alone to Strelsau to put his head in that lion's mouth in the Königstrasse. "There will be three of them there: Rupert, Rischenheim, and my rascal Bauer," said I. "As to Rupert, we don't know," Sapt reminded me. "He'll be there if Rischenheim arrives in time to tell him the truth; but we have also to be ready for him here and at the hunting lodge. Well, we're ready for him wherever he is. Rudolf will be in Strelsau, you and I will ride to the lodge, and Bernenstein will be here with the queen." "Only one here?" I asked. "Ay, but a good one," said the constable, clapping Bernenstein on the shoulder. "We shan't be gone above 4 hours, and those while the king is safe in his bed. Bernenstein has only to refuse access to him, and stand to that with his life till we come back. You're equal to that, eh, Lieutenant?" I am by nature a cautious man, and prone to look on the dark side of every prospect and the risks of every enterprise; but I could not see what better dispositions were possible against the attack that threatened us. Yet I was sorely uneasy concerning Mr. Rassendyll. Now, after all our stir and runnings to and fro, came an hour or two of peace. We employed the time in having a good meal, and it was past 5 when, our repast finished, we sat back in our chairs enjoying cigars. James had waited on us, quietly usurping the office of the constable's own servant, and thus we were able to talk freely. The man's calm confidence in his master and his master's fortune also went far to comfort me. "The king should be back soon," said Sapt at last, with a glance at his big, old-fashioned silver watch. "Thank God! He'll be too tired to sit up long. We shall be free by 9 o'clock, Fritz. I wish young Rupert would come to the lodge." And the colonel's face expressed a lively pleasure at the idea. 6 o'clock struck, and the king did not appear. A few moments later a message came from the Queen, requesting our presence on the terrace in front of the chateau. The place commanded a view of the road by which the king would ride back, and we found the Queen walking restlessly up and down, considerably disquieted by the lateness of his return. In such a position as ours, every unusual or unforeseen incident magnifies its possible meaning, and invests itself with a sinister importance, which would at ordinary times seem absurd. We three shared the Queen's feelings, and forgetting the many chances of the chase, any one of which would amply account for the king's delay, fell to speculating on remote possibilities of disaster. He might have met Rischenheim, although they had ridden in opposite directions. Rupert might have intercepted him, though no means could have brought Rupert to the forest so early. Our fears defeated common sense, and our conjectures outran possibility. Sapt was the first to recover from this foolish mood, and he rated us soundly, not sparing even the Queen herself. With a laugh we regained some of our equanimity, and felt rather ashamed of our weakness. "Still, it's strange that he doesn't come," murmured the Queen, shading her eyes with her hand, and looking along the road to where the dark masses of the forest trees bounded our view. It was already dusk, but not so dark that we could have seen the king's party as soon as it came into the open. If the king's delay seemed strange at 6, it was stranger at 7, and by 8 most strange. We had long since ceased to talk lightly. By now we had lapsed into silence. Sapt's scoldings had died away. The Queen, wrapped in her furs, for it was very cold, sat sometimes on a seat, but oftener paced restlessly to and fro. Evening had fallen. We did not know what to do, nor even whether we ought to do anything. Sapt would not own to sharing our worst apprehensions, but his gloomy silence in face of our surmises witnessed that he was in his heart as disturbed as we were. For my part, I had come to the end of my endurance, and I cried: "For God's sake, let's act! Shall I go and seek him?" "A needle in a bundle of hay," said Sapt with a shrug. But at this instant my ear caught the sound of horses cantering on the road from the forest, and at the same moment Bernenstein cried: "Here they come!" The Queen paused, and we gathered round her. The horse hoofs came nearer. Now we made out the figures of 3 men. They were the King's huntsmen, and they rode along merrily, singing a hunting chorus. The sound of it brought relief to us. So far there was at least no disaster. But why was not the King with them? "The King is probably tired and is following more slowly, madam," suggested Bernenstein. This explanation seemed very probable, and the lieutenant and I, as ready to be hopeful on slight grounds as fearful on small provocation, joyfully accepted it. Sapt, less easily turned to either mood, said: "Ay, but let us hear," and raising his voice, called to the huntsmen, who had now arrived in the avenue. One of them, the King's chief huntsman, Simon, gorgeous in his uniform of green and gold, came swaggering along and bowed low to the Queen. "Well, Simon, where is the King?" she asked, trying to smile. "The King, madame, has sent a message by me to your Majesty." "Pray deliver it to me, Simon." "I will, madame. The King has enjoyed fine sport, and indeed, madame, if I may say so for myself, a better run " "You may say, friend Simon," interrupted the constable, tapping him on the shoulder, "anything you like for yourself, but as a matter of etiquette the King's message should come first." "Oh, ay, constable," said Simon. "You're always so down on a man, aren't you? Well then, madame, the King has enjoyed fine sport. for we started a boar at 11, and " "Is this the king's message, Simon?" asked the queen.